Hi everyone, Shane R. Monroe here, and it's time for another Directory Opus tutorial. This time it's going to be on file collections and stored queries, things that even die-hard Directory Opus users may not even know about, or if they do, maybe they're not using it to the fullest extent that they could be. So let's get started. The file collections can be found in your tree here on the left-hand side, depending on, of course, how you have everything configured. I'm trying to keep it as stock as possible, but things are going to be a little different, probably from your version. But file collections are virtual file systems. In other words, everything that's inside these file collections is probably fake or pointers to real files, or sometimes even the files themselves can be seen. The idea of file collections is, well, to group similar files and folders into one easy to access location. And there's a couple of different ways you can leverage it, which is really pretty cool. I'm going to show you 3 different ways to leverage it. And then we're going to look at the stored query that I've got here, and I'll show you how to make your own. Stored queries are really, well, they're just what they say. They're queries that are stored that you can pull up anytime that you want. Now, I do realize that Directory Opus has an amazing find tool on its utility panel, and this is more of a pre-canned shortcut version of that, but it'll all make sense when we get to it. Let's start off by looking at a couple of these pre-canned ones that I made, and then we'll make a couple with you here live. So the first thing we have here is CD32 DVDs. Now, I have a plethora of DVDs loaded up with Amiga CD32 game ISOs. I don't always remember what titles I have and what drive that they might be sitting on. So what I did was I inserted each one of my CD collections or my DVD collections of these games, and I added them to this virtual file system or file collection. As you can see here, now all of my games are located in one place that I can then see what it is that I have, and I can even dig in and see what format that they're in. So if I were to go in and look at this Guardian, I will see that it's in a mixed mode ISO format. So maybe there's one out there that's not in mixed mode and I can get a new copy of that one. Or I may actually even have one of those if I dig through my collection far enough. I might actually have one that's similar to that, but nope, looks like they're all that. But see, these files, while they do appear to be real, they're all located on a drive that doesn't exist. See, there's no Q drive here. These are snapshots. This is a view of each one of these disks I put in and brought into a file collection. I can't click these, even though they look like real files. If you double click them, nothing happens because they don't exist anymore because the disk was taken out. So what I've used file collections for is sort of a archival listing, right? You pay big money for software that does this. But I have access, I can see I've got a bin queue for that. I've got a CCD image format for this one, but everything's here and I can look at it without dragging the disks out and taking a look. This would be something like WinCat or WinCatalog. There's a whole bunch of tools that would catalog for you, but you know, you already own Opus. Why not use it for something like that, for cataloging and archiving? And again, these are snapshots, right? There's nothing in here that's real other than the fact that they came off of a real disk. Now, you'll also notice that these collections have real file system names. Instead of being FTP or SMB, they are COLLs, or for collections. Now, Directory Opus can make use of these in anything. They can make use of them in scripts, buttons, macros, whatever you want to use them for, you can address them as such. Now, unfortunately, the actual Windows file system doesn't see these, so you can't actually leave Directory Opus and use these collections there. But, you know, you're going to be using Directory Opus anyway, so who cares, right? So these are all virtual, right? They don't really exist. They existed in one particular location at one particular time. I snapshot their location, and there they are. So let's look at this as something a little more, I don't know, probably something more usable for everybody. On my Plex server, I have a lot of hard drives. In fact, I've got a NAS, I've got externally connected drives, internal drives, and they all share similar formats. I store TV shows and movies on all of these drives. Now, I have an E drive. I have numerous drives, G, H, I, J, K, T, V, X, and that's before I go to my NAS. And each and every one of these, I'm storing movies and TV in these sort of named folders, right? So all my movies up to 1995 go in this type of folder. 1996 to 2011, this folder, et cetera, et cetera. And if you go to any of my drives, even though I tried to maintain some sort of a naming convention, unfortunately, I didn't do a very good job. This one's movies pre-1995. And if we go over to my G drive, you'll see that it's a little bit different. It's movies through 1995. Sometimes I put the underscores in front, sometimes I don't. So it's kind of messy, but I have all of these drives and my NAS and everything else where all of these movies hang out. See, I've got pre-1995s all over the place. And this is to sort of stretch my load of movies, right? So I don't put everything on one drive. I kind of scatter them around and I fill them up in some sort of an equal manner. Now, I know that seems a little bit crazy, but I'm sure many of you have a solution like this where you keep similar things together organized that way. All right, so what we've got here is I've got probably 10 locations that all have movies pre-1995. This sounds like a great way to use file collections. And so as you can see in my file collections list, let's put it down here. My file collections list, I actually have movies 1930 to 1995. Let's go take a look at that. You'll see I have two of them. One of them is what I call live and the other one's not. What does that mean? What's the difference? All right, let's go ahead and take a look inside of movies. Now you'll see here that I have nice English friendly or easily to read labels for all of these. E drive, G drive, H drive, J drive, K drive. My 3 NAS drives that have these sets of movies on them, V, X. I've got a lot of locations, right? In fact, I got 10 of them according to Opus. And if I dig myself in here and go into E drive, you'll see some of my movies I have just laying on the root, and some of them I actually have ripped extras off my discs. If I go into April Fool's Day, you see I have a featurettes folder with all the featurettes that I ripped, and of course the movie itself. Now, what you're seeing here, this little piece of paper, these are all virtual. Let's go ahead and move my location over here where it's a little bit easier to see. And you'll see that these are all collection folders. These aren't real folders. They exist in a collection. But as I dig in, you'll also see that this folder is part of a collection, but this file is real. It's sitting at server box 2 eMovies April Fool's Day. This is a real file. I could actually bring up the viewer, and because this is a real file that still exists, I can bring that movie up or those files and access them directly. In fact, if I were to delete this file, it'll actually warn me. This file is real. If you can remove the file from the collection without deleting them, but you have to use something different. If I were to hit delete, I would literally delete this file because it's real. It's in a real location that is shown to me by various collection static file folders here, the collection folders. So what you do to get rid of it is you'd right click it and you'd say remove from collection. Now you're probably thinking, hey, that's pretty cool. I mean, that gives a lot of options, a lot of things you could do with that. Now, there's a few things you've got to know about this type of collection. This is sort of what I would call mixed. This is a live file, but everything above it is not. And by the way, this folder, this April Fool's Day folder, it has other stuff in it now. But because when I made the snapshot, those files weren't there, they're not included. Let me show you. This says that it's on server box 2 eMovies April Fool's Day. So if I go in here, here's the real folder. Here's April Fool's Day and featurettes, but there's a test file in here. It's not down here. And it's not down here because I added this text file after I took the snapshot. So this list, while the entries that are here are live, new entries won't necessarily get brought in here unless you add them yourself. So the usefulness of tracking real-time running folders using file collections this way anyway doesn't really make sense because you're going to miss things. If I add a new movie to this folder, it's not going to get picked up here because I've already taken a snapshot of this location. But there are ways of doing it where it is live data, and I'm going to show you the differences now. So let's go back to the file collections and go to live. So this version is still a file collection, but if you notice when I go in here, these folders are all instantly live folders. There's no COLL prefixes. These are live. You'll also notice that they're all named funky. See, I told you I couldn't make up my mind, and they all got some sort of different names. This is real. This is a real folder. If I were to try to delete it, it would tell me, hey, it's a real folder. If you delete that folder, if I were to rename this folder, that would be bad. So here, where's my E? Here's my E. If I go to E, if I renamed this folder here and I called it, I don't know, look at that. It actually updated the real folder. We don't want that because now I just disconnected it from Plex. Plex won't know where to look for that folder. So these are live, which is great because now when I go into this folder, anything that's here should still be here. Let's go see if that test file is here. Oops, I went to a real location. Let me go back. File collections, E, April Fool's Day, sure enough. So look at this, we're in a real path at this point. So anything you do with this is real files, real folders. But we're still gaining the value of the file collection by having all of those folders scattered across my network, all in one location where I can get to it very, very easily. So that's really neat. It's a really neat tool, and a lot of people probably aren't using it. Now, unfortunately, the way that it's set up here is I can't name these, I can't rename these, but having the location here, I kind of know where they're at, and this is enough of a label for me. But your mileage may vary. So now you've seen sort of an archival usage for file collections. You've seen a snapshot methodology that would be great for drives or locations that aren't being readily changed all the time. And finally, you have the all-time live version of these file collections. We're going to show you how to make those different when you make your file collection. You can even mix them if you want, and I'll show you how to do that too. Okay, so now that we've seen file collections, let's look at the query, right? I promised you a query. So you can go in here and do a new stored query or a new collection, right-clicking on the file collection. But I have one right here called greater than 5 gigabytes MKVs. I name this is my name, not Directory Opus's name. And if I go into this file collection, it's going to pull up every single file on my local machine that meets certain criteria. In my case, things that are greater than 5 gigabytes and have the MKV extension. It's really easy for these file extension types like MKVs or MP4s to kind of run wild, right? You're downloading videos off YouTube or you're making your own videos or whatever. Things can get pretty big, right? I mean, I've got a recording session for my Directory Opus 13 that's 21 gigabytes. I don't need that anymore. That video's done. So this will help you go back and help clean up. But how does that work? How did I make that? So if I go here and select properties and we go to the query tab, you'll see that it's using a query that's based on the Windows search language. So if you've ever used Windows search, like on Windows 10 or 11, and you've built your own sort of queries, then you could use those same types of queries here. Now, the devil is in the details, and that is what search engine you're using. Now, under your search engine, you have Windows Search, which is, Windows Search is okay. It's not great. You have everything local, which would be whatever folder you were just in, everything global, which is everything on your local file system, and the Opus Search. Now, we're using everything global. Now, everything is a tool from a company called Void Tools. It's integrated into, Directory Opus integrates with it. So it gives Directory Opus a backbone of file sizes and indexes that it normally wouldn't have access to. It's because of this integration. Now, if you don't have everything installed, you're not going to be able to use this search engine. You're not going to get that sort of widespread results that you might normally get. So you'll need to install that. It's free, it's small, it's lightweight, it's not going to run your system down. I recommend it for everybody if you're using Directory Opus. So along with what I'm using to search, what am I searching? Size greater than 5 gigabytes with the extension MKV. Now I could just as easily turn that into MP4, right? and apply it, hit OK. Now you'll see that everything shows up that are MP4s. And again, a lot of stuff that I probably need to get rid of or clean up. So you can make this whatever you want it to be. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Shane, there's a great find tool built into Opus that could easily do this, and we could save it off as a favorite, blah, blah, blah. Yes, you can. This is sort of a lighter sort of version of it. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, let's take a quick look. If you go to Find Files and Folders, and you take a look, I could actually find names that match star.mkv or MP4, and I could add size of matches greater than 5 gigabytes, right? And this is essentially the same thing in actuality, and you can specify what you search. This is the heavier lifting version of this. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, does this output somehow to this? In other words, can I take what I build with this UI and apply it to a stored query? The answer is no. Even with this cool new edit as text from Directory Opus 13, this, while close, does not match the code or the query represented here, right? So you have size : greater than 5 gigabytes. This says size match greater than 5 gigabytes. It's close, but no cigar. So you can't cut and paste this and put it in here. That is unfortunate, but that's just the way it goes. So if you want to use stored queries, you're going to have to learn Microsoft's own Windows search methodologies, and I'll leave a link in the description below that'll give you sort of an idea where to start to learn that. These are very cool, though. I mean, if you're somebody who's always chasing a certain file type down, or you're looking for high size files or large files, different types of files, it's very, very great to be able to use something like a stored query to constantly go back and get that. Okay, so we've talked about it all. We've talked about file collections. We've talked about using them as a static sort of archival listing. We've talked about using them as a snapshot, right, without sort of that live updating element. And we've looked at it from a completely live point of view where we're just bringing the files together into one location. But let's talk about how you get there, right? Because these are both file collections, but the way they behave is very different, even though they contain the same information. So I'm going to make a new collection. Probably know where we're going with this. I'm going to make a new collection. I'm going to call it Movies. Look at that. I didn't even remember the last one I did when I did my my preview video. All right, so I'm going to make this 96 to 2011. All right, so now I've got a new virtual file collection with nothing in it. So we're going to go to E. Do I have one in E? I do not. How about G? G I do. Okay, so now we're going to grab this and we're going to drag it over to this virtual collection. Now, here's the magic. Members is live, sub-collections is a snapshot. If I were to add this as a sub-collection, you can see here, it looks, these are actually live, these are live files. I can go in and do stuff with it. But if I were to change what's inside of this folder, it's not going to get reflected here. Now, you could bring this down and add it, but this time we'll call it members. Now, see, it looks like a real folder now, and it's got a real location. This means that it is, the COLL means that it is a static collection. It's not going to get updated live. This means that that location in this folder will get updated live. And in fact, we could probably go in there and test this by simply making a, let's see, new text file, call it test. All right, if we go into the live one, is test in there? Yes, it is. If we go into the other one, if I go into the snapshot one, you can see, if I even sort by name, you can see that that text file isn't there. So there's your difference. That's how you do it. When you drag it in, and we can go to another location. I'm going to go ahead and remove this live one for now. I'm going to remove it from the collection. Don't delete it. You'll delete the folder. Bad things will happen. I'm going to go to my H. Do I have one here? I do not. What about I? Nope. J. Yes, I do. I'm going to drag this down. I'm going to make it a sub-collection, right? So it's, again, a static snapshot. And we could go through all of my other drives and add all of them. And essentially, I would end up with what we saw before for my 1990 or my 1930s to 1995, right? And again, you can rename these, which is absolutely, did I not get that right? What'd I do? Maybe I did. Sub-collections. It added this because it's the same name. Aha, well, that's a good thing that we went in here, right? So let's go ahead. So let's start over again, shall we? Let's go back to G. I'm going to make that new folder again. All right. And we're going to drag this guy in, call it sub-collections. We're going to go to H. And that one didn't have one, did it? I, J. Okay, we'll bring this one in. Two different ones, right? So this one has an underscore, this one doesn't. Let me go to the next one, K. This one shares the same name with this. If I drag this down here, it's going to combine with this one. Probably not what you want. So what we will do is we'll rename this to make sure that there's no collisions. I think this was E, right? So I'll just name it E for now. Then when I drag this down, you can see it makes a new one. And I could just, be money ahead here and call this one K, right? So you get the idea. So you can drag all these things down and now you have one collection to rule them all for 1996 to 2011. And that's really it. That's how these things work. You're probably thinking to yourself, I wouldn't use that. I don't really have a need for that. But as you think about it, as you're going through your daily file management life, you may come up and say, man, I do have MP3s in a couple different locations, right? I've got one set of MP3s that are my gold collection, and then I've got another set of MP3s, which are my need to tag, need to rename, need to put art on or whatever. You're processing those, but you've got these that are ready to go, but you need to see what you have as a collection of all your MP3s. So that's pretty neat. Listen, we could probably talk a little bit more about this, but you get the idea, you see how they work, and I don't want to make these videos too long because people start tuning me out, right? And that's going to do it. Listen, if you like these Directory Opus videos, please leave comments. Let me know that this is what you want to see more of. These are not high viewership videos typically, and while I'm happy to make them, even though they're not getting a lot of attention because I want to support the product and help you guys out with it, if people, don't let me know you want to see them, I move back to Steam Deck videos that everybody seems to want to see. Anyway, I'm Shane R. Monroe. Please like this video, subscribe, hit the bell. You guys know what to do. Help keep the channel alive. I'm Shane R. Monroe, and until next time, take care, everybody. We'll see you later.